The restaurant fell silent as Sarah Chen stood up, tears streaming down her face. The billionaire tech CEO who graced magazine covers and commanded boardrooms was now kneeling beside a stranger's table, holding the hand of a man who had changed her life forever without even knowing it. "I've been searching for you for 15 years, she whispered, her voice breaking. No one could have predicted how this chance encounter would transform not just one family's future, but an entire community. Before we continue this incredible true story that's touching hearts across the nation, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more life-changing stories that remind us of the extraordinary connections that shape our world. The evening had begun like any other for Sarah Chen. After a 14-hour workday finalizing her company's newest acquisition, she had slipped away from her executive team, seeking a quiet dinner alone at Rosetta's, a modest family restaurant she frequented when she needed to escape the pressures of being the 38-year-old founder and CEO of Horizon Technologies, now valued at over $11 billion. Sarah sat in her usual corner booth, partially hidden by a decorative plant that offered her rare privacy. She wore no makeup, her normally perfect hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, designer clothes exchanged for jeans and a plain sweater. Here, she could be anonymous, just another patron enjoying the restaurant's famous lasagna rather than the woman whose face had appeared on the cover of Forbes 3 times in the past year. The restaurant was busier than usual for a Wednesday night. As Sarah absently scrolled through emails on her phone, the hostess seated a family at the table directly across from her. A man in his early 40s with 3 children, 2 boys who appeared to be around 10 and 12, and a girl who couldn't have been more than 6. The father looked exhausted, dark circles prominent under his eyes, his shoulders slightly hunched as if carrying an invisible weight. "Daddy, can I get the chocolate milk?" the little girl asked, her voice carrying across to Sarah's table. "Not tonight, Emma," the father replied gently. "Remember what we talked about? We're being extra careful with money this month." The little girl's face fell momentarily before brightening again. "That's okay. Water is healthier anyway, right?" The father smiled, reaching across to tousle her hair. "That's my girl." Something about the interaction made Sarah pause. She watched as the man helped his children with their menus, patiently explaining to the youngest which options were within their budget. When the waitress came, he ordered only a side salad for himself while ensuring each child got a proper meal. Sarah couldn't explain why, but she found herself unable to look away. There was something hauntingly familiar about the man's profile, the way he tilted his head slightly when listening to his children, the gentle patience in his voice. As their food arrived, Sarah observed the small family ritual that unfolded. The father asked each child about their day, giving them his complete attention as they spoke. The older boy talked excitedly about a science project, while the younger one described scoring a goal in soccer practice. The little girl proudly announced she had helped a new student find her way to the classroom. "That was very kind of you, Emma," the father said. "Remember what Mom always used to say?" The 3 children recited in unison, "Kindness costs nothing but means everything." Sarah's fork clattered loudly against her plate, drawing several glances her way. Her hands trembled as memories crashed over her like waves. That phrase, she hadn't heard it in 15 years, not since. The man looked over at the noise, his eyes meeting Sarah's for the first time. For a moment, neither moved. Then recognition dawned slowly on his face, followed by disbelief. "Sarah," he whispered, just loudly enough for her to hear. Sarah stood on unsteady legs and approached their table. "Michael?" Her voice caught on his name. "Michael Taylor?" The children looked between the adults in confusion as Sarah sank into the empty chair the man, Michael, pulled out for her. "Kids, this is an old friend," Michael explained, his voice strained with emotion. "Sarah, these are my children, Jason, Lucas, and Emma." Sarah barely registered the introductions, her mind reeling with the impossibility of this moment. We all thought. "I know," Michael said quietly. "It's a long story." "Daddy, who is she?" little Emma asked, tugging at her father's sleeve. Michael took a deep breath. "Remember how I told you that before your mom and I met, I was in the military? And that I was hurt very badly overseas?" The children nodded. "Well, Sarah was the person who found me. She saved my life." What Michael couldn't say in front of his children, was that Sarah had been a 23-year-old aid worker in Afghanistan when their paths had crossed. Michael, a young army medic, had been presumed dead after an attack on his unit. Sarah had found him barely alive among the rubble and stayed with him through the night, keeping him conscious by talking about her dreams of starting a technology company that would change the world. When rescue finally came, they were separated in the chaos. Sarah had searched for months afterward, only to be told that Michael Taylor had succumbed to his injuries during transport. She had carried the weight of that loss for 15 years, channeling her grief into building Horizon Technologies, a company whose first product had been medical devices designed specifically for combat zones. "I looked for you," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They told me you didn't make it." "There was a mix-up with identification," Michael explained. "By the time it was sorted out, I was in a military hospital in Germany. I spent 2 years in recovery, learning to walk again. When I finally made it back to the States, everything had changed." "Dad was a hero," the older boy, Jason, interjected proudly. "He got a Purple Heart and everything." Sarah noticed for the first time the slight stiffness in Michael's movements, the way he favored his right side. "You have a beautiful family," she said, smiling through her tears. "Had," Michael corrected gently. "Their mother, Diane, passed away 3 years ago. Cancer." "I'm so sorry," Sarah said, understanding now the weight she had sensed on his shoulders. "We're managing," Michael said, though the strain in his voice suggested otherwise. "I work as a physical therapist now, helping other veterans. It's rewarding work, but—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. Sarah had already noticed the careful budgeting, the worn edges of the children's clothes, the way Michael had ordered only a salad for himself. "Dad helps everybody," Emma declared proudly. "Even when we don't have much money, he still volunteers at the Veterans Center on weekends." Michael looked embarrassed. "Emma, remember our conversation about private matters?" But Sarah was already making connections, her mind working with the same precision that had built her business empire. "The Taylor Veterans Rehabilitation Program at Memorial Hospital? That's you?" Michael nodded. "It started small, just me and a couple of buddies trying to provide support that wasn't available when we came home. Now we work with about 50 veterans a month, but funding is always tight." Sarah remembered the article she had read just last week about innovative veteran support programs. The Taylor program had been highlighted for its remarkable success rate but noted as chronically underfunded. In that moment, something shifted inside Sarah. For 15 years, she had built walls around herself, focusing solely on her company's growth. The young idealist who had dreamed of changing the world had been buried beneath quarterly reports and shareholder meetings. Looking at Michael and his children, she suddenly saw with painful clarity what her success had cost her. "Would you excuse me for a moment?" Sarah asked, pulling out her phone. She stepped away from the table and made a brief call, speaking in low, urgent tones. When she returned, her decision was made. "Michael, I'd like to make a proposition." 3 months later, Sarah stood on a stage beside Michael, cutting the ribbon on the newly established Taylor Veteran Center, a state-of-the-art facility that would provide comprehensive support to returning service members and their families. Behind them stood Michael's children, beaming with pride. The journey to this moment had not been simple. After their chance meeting at Rosetta's, Sarah had immediately committed to funding Michael's program, but he had initially resisted, uncomfortable with accepting such generosity. "I don't want charity," he had told her during a tense conversation at his modest home the day after their reunion. "It's not charity," Sarah had insisted. "It's an investment in work that matters. Work that should have been supported long ago." Gradually, Michael had come to accept that Sarah's offer came not from pity but from a genuine belief in his mission. Together, they had expanded his program into a comprehensive center that would serve thousands of veterans annually. What neither had anticipated was how working together would rekindle the connection that had formed during those desperate hours in Afghanistan. As they collaborated on plans for the center, the walls Sarah had built around her heart slowly crumbled. For Michael, who had been focused solely on survival, first his own, then his family's, after losing his wife, Sarah's presence brought unexpected light back into his life. The children had been wary at first, especially Jason, who feared this newcomer might somehow diminish the memory of their mother. But Sarah had approached them with genuine respect, never trying to replace what they had lost but offering instead a new kind of friendship. It was Emma who had first warmed to her, delighted by Sarah's stories of traveling the world. Lucas had been won over when Sarah helped him build a robot for his science fair project. Jason had taken longer, but the breakthrough came when Sarah arranged for him to meet one of his heroes, a former military pilot who now worked as an engineer at Horizon Technologies. As Sarah looked out at the crowd gathered for the center's opening, she saw not just the culmination of a project but the beginning of a new chapter. For the first time in 15 years, her success felt meaningful beyond the numbers in a bank account. "I want to thank Michael Taylor," Sarah said into the microphone, her voice steady despite the emotion welling inside her. 15 years ago, he taught me that survival sometimes depends on having someone who believes in you. Today, this center stands as a promise that no one who has served our country will have to face their battles alone. Michael stepped forward, taking her hand in his. "And I want to thank Sarah Chen, who proves that sometimes angels appear exactly when we need them most, whether in a war zone or a family restaurant." The crowd applauded, unaware of the deeper current passing between them, the unspoken acknowledgement that their chance reunion had healed wounds neither had realized they still carried. 1 year later, Sarah sat on the porch swing of Michael's house, now their house, watching as he taught Emma how to ride a bicycle without training wheels. Jason and Lucas were setting up a volleyball net in the yard, arguing good-naturedly about the rules of the game they planned to play. Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from her assistant about an upcoming board meeting, but for once, she didn't immediately respond. Instead, she set the phone aside and called out encouragement as Emma made her first wobbly solo ride across the driveway. The transition hadn't been easy. Merging two lives never is, especially when one of those lives includes 3 children still grieving their mother. There had been arguments and tears, moments of doubt and fear. Sarah had struggled to scale back her 70-hour workweeks, while Michael had found it difficult to accept that he was now part of a family that would never worry about money again. But they had faced each challenge together, just as they had during that long-ago night in Afghanistan. Sarah had learned that the strength that built a business empire could also build a family. Michael had discovered that accepting help didn't diminish his role as a father but enhanced it. The Chen Taylor Veterans Center had flourished, becoming a model for similar programs across the country. Sarah had established a foundation that ensured its funding in perpetuity, then turned her considerable influence toward advocating for policy changes that would better support returning service members. Michael continued to work directly with veterans, his first-hand understanding of their struggles making him uniquely effective. Together, they had created something neither could have accomplished alone. As Emma pedaled triumphantly toward them, Michael jogged alongside, ready to catch her if she fell but allowing her the freedom to succeed on her own. The parallels to their own journey were not lost on Sarah. "Did you see me?" Emma shouted, bringing the bicycle to a wobbly stop in front of the porch. "I did it all by myself." "I saw," Sarah said, smiling. "You were amazing. Just like Mom used to do with me," Jason said quietly, coming to stand beside Sarah. It was the first time he had voluntarily drawn a connection between Sarah and the mother they had lost, a small but significant acknowledgement of Sarah's place in their lives. Sarah reached out and squeezed his hand, no words necessary between them. Later that evening, after the children had gone to bed, Sarah and Michael sat together on the porch swing, watching fireflies blink in the gathering darkness. Do you ever think about how easily we might have missed each other that night at Rosetta's? Michael asked. If you'd chosen a different restaurant, or if we'd come on a different night. I think about it all the time, Sarah admitted. For years, I convinced myself that success meant never needing anyone. I built a company worth billions but came home to an empty house every night. Michael put his arm around her shoulders, drawing her closer. And I was so focused on just getting through each day that I couldn't see a future beyond survival. Kindness costs nothing but means everything, Sarah quoted softly. Diane was a wise woman. She would have liked you, Michael said. She always said that life's greatest gifts often come disguised as its greatest challenges. Sarah thought about the long path that had led them here, from a war-torn landscape to a quiet suburban porch. About how a chance encounter had reminded her of the young woman who had once dreamed of changing the world, not just conquering it. I've been thinking, she said, turning to face Michael. What if we expanded the Foundation's mission? Not just veterans, but their families too. Programs for children who've lost parents in service, support for spouses, educational opportunities. Michael smiled, recognizing the familiar spark in her eyes. The Chin-Taylor Family Foundation? Exactly, Sarah said. Because that's what we've learned, isn't it? That healing doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in connection. As they sat together planning their next chapter, Sarah reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had brought them to this moment. How a random decision to eat alone at a family restaurant had led to the rediscovery of a man she had never forgotten. How dropping her fork in shock had been the first step toward dropping the barriers she had built around her heart. Sometimes the most unthinkable actions, reaching out to a stranger, opening yourself to love again, believing in second chances, turn out to be the most natural ones of all. The story of Sarah Chen and Michael Taylor continues to inspire thousands around the world. Their foundation now supports over 50,000 veterans and their families annually, and their marriage last spring was attended by many of the people whose lives they've touched. When asked about the secret to their success, both give the same answer: remember that everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. A simple act of kindness can change the course of a life, sometimes even your own. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe for more real-life tales of extraordinary connections that remind us of our shared humanity. And remember, sometimes the most meaningful encounters happen when we least expect them, perhaps even at the next table in a restaurant where a billionaire CEO might drop her fork and do the unthinkable.